Bluest Blues by Kieran Marsden. They say men fall in love with their eyes and women fall in love with their ears. Well, if that's true, that men must fall in love a lot quicker. And I believe it's quite possible for a man to fall in love at almost instantaneous sight. Because it was a woman with the bluest eyes that made me feel the bluest I had ever been. Damn, I fell hard to her. This story starts a dozen years ago. Wow, I don't know. Maybe it took all this time to write about it. I hope going back there doesn't unsettle my mind too much. I met her in September, in my first days of university, Freshers' Week as they call it. I'd only gone to escape home, to get drunk, party, meet people. Terrible, really. No wonder I failed. Or did I? Because I did get away from home, I did party and I did meet people. I never really thought about that. I remember standing in a queue on a warm summer's night. Teenage intoxication was the theme. With really genuine, "Hello, how are you? What's your name?" It was a free-for-all of insecurity and panic, being away from home and needing that connection. It was all over the place like that. Everybody just needed something to hold on to latch onto. I was waiting to get into the student union bar. It was for the third night in a row, and I was with a guy that was from a couple doors down from my room. To look at, we could have been friends, but as I caught glimpses of his character, I knew it was never meant to be. An egomaniac who was doing acting with an attention span of a goldfish. Anyway, that doesn't have much to do with our story, but the next character does. In front of me was a pair of pale legs in high heels and a short skirt and a short top. A boob tube, is that what it's called? She had curly blonde hair that draped down her back. Who had said the first words? I don't know, I have no idea. But when she turned around, I was looking into the biggest blue eyes I had ever seen, complemented by the biggest smile. Sure, these are cliches in stories, time old that have lost all relevance and meaning. But I reiterate, they were the biggest, bluest eyes I had ever seen to this day. Her friend was a small brunette Welsh girl who, I feel cruel to say it, but was squandered into an irrelevance standing next to this girl. Now, since I'm telling a story, the idea here would be to put in some dialogue, but I don't remember a word spoken on that warm summer's night a dozen years ago. All I remember is a face and the blue of her eyes. Maybe if I'd put pen to paper 6-7 years ago, all kinds of details and blemishes would provide this story with a realism and put you fully there in a more encompassing escapism. But today, I'm no bullshitter, so I'll just tell you the story how I remember it. I vaguely remember walking up some stairs towards the bar under an ugly white artificial light, and I remember how them beautiful eyes seemed to watch me with a keener intent than my compadre. A door opened and 4 of us walked towards the dance floor, towards bassy music that sounded like a robot having an LSD trip, and flashing lights lit up the darkness. After a quick visit to the bar, the 4 of us was back on the dance floor, and it was quick, We'd been drinking before, vodkas and stuff back at the dorms. It was only topping up, really. I remember the actor acting like he could dance. It was embarrassing. I can't even explain it, but what he was doing, it wouldn't have been cool in 1999. I spoke to both the girls. In my over self-conscious way, I didn't want her friend to feel bad in any way. But seldom was said in words. No. But a love poem of epic proportion was spoken in them big blue eyes. I stared into them deeply as my head moved away from her ear. Our lips moved but could barely be heard over the bass coming from the DJ. The only word I remember for certain was, wait for it, squirrel. That's right. When that awful actor had seen blue eyes watching my eyes, he decided to tell me, squirrel. We were standing under the awful white artificial light on the landing. You what? I said loudly. Squirrel? On that girl? He repeated. Squirrel? I questioned, as if he'd gone nuts. Don't worry, I won't make a joke about that. Yeah, squirrel. As in, when you both see a girl you like. Squirrel. First to say it gets her. I'm not sure if he made that up on the spot, but it was a terrible effort. He could see them gorgeous eyes were for me. My response to it? You can fuck right off. Not long later, I took out my Nokia and asked for a number. She couldn't type it in quick enough. The next week I was in the pitiful excuse for dorms. They literally knocked them down a couple of years after we left. And she came to meet me there. I remember us sitting in this so-called kitchen, talking, smiling, but people kept coming in, and they didn't leave. I know it was the second week of university, and a lot of people from all over the country and even the world had been thrown together. So when they saw something they thought looked nice, they clung to it. And I don't just mean her, sure. She was devastatingly pretty, beautiful even. But it was the chemistry between us that they could feel and they wanted to experiment with. I'm sure it was a lot more fun than sitting alone in their rooms with a place that didn't even have Wi-Fi. Before we knew it, there was us two and maybe 5 or 6 guys with us. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. Anyway, guys, us two are going to get off. We're going to get some beers for tonight, go down to the supermarket. So, I said. Yeah, I need to go there too, actually, said essentially everyone there. So, oh yeah, by the way, the awful actor was there too. So, 6 or 7 of us, or whatever it was, headed to the supermarket. And I remember, in there, as we stood next to the Peppers, she grabbed my hand and held it tight. It was the most sexual thing to happen to me in 2 years, and something in my tracksuit bottoms began to stir. I had to let go. And just while we're at this point, I don't know what you expected from listening to this kind of story, but I'm going to tell you what it is now. It's not a romance, it's not a poem. It's a bleed from the pen. It's exposure, showing my soul and hopefully revealing something about the human condition that everybody tries to hide. So where was I? Ah yes, my semi. I had to get rid of it and quick. I had to let go of her hand and walk off. I hope she wasn't too offended. When we had finished our pitiful excuse for a shopping trip, when we left the supermarket, she said, Daniel? Oh, that's me, by the way. Sorry if I didn't introduce myself. Nice to meet you. I'm going to go back to mine, she said. She lived on the university flats on another part of town. Do you want to come back for a bit? Then blue eyes fluttered at me, and I couldn't believe my luck. It lasted for about 3 seconds. Oh, cool. I'm free for the rest of the day. I'll come too. It was Actor Boy. Yeah, unbelievable, right? If this was pure fiction, you wouldn't believe it, and now a dozen years later, as my ink falls from my pen, I can barely believe it too. Jesus. All 3 of us sat in her room and we didn't do much, apart from wait for her to get ready. I remember 2 things. When I left her room to use the toilet, as I walked down the corridor, I looked back. She was checking me out, and she wanted me to know. A coy smile with an upturned lip, as she returned back to her room. And the other thing I remember was, when she left her room for some reason, I checked the actor. I don't remember what was said, but it probably went something like this. Look, mate, it's obvious she likes me. Can't you see it? You think? He said, like he couldn't possibly believe a girl might like me more than him. Yeah. Come on, man. Stop blocking me, I said. I ain't doing that, he said, laughing. Sure feels like it. You're just getting in the way, I said. Do you fancy a threesome? He said. Nah, mate. I'm good, thanks. After a bus journey back across town, it wasn't long before I was back in that pitiful excuse for a kitchen. Again, 6 or 7 men and a beautiful blue-eyed girl. It was night time now, and I'm not sure how many beers it took before I grabbed her hand and led her to my room. Now it was just me and her. This isn't a smutty story, so I won't tell you the details, but it was self-questioning, a little awkward, but in youthful ignorance it believed it was perfect. And after, in the dark, we laid naked in a single creaky metal bed. I remember holding my arms up, resting them behind my head against the wall, in what was probably the closest I'll ever feel to a heroin high. Words were uttered, but all I remember was the moon in the window beside me. Maybe an hour later I was back in that kitchen, and I drank beer with no top on, at the door, blissful and happy, chatting with these guys I now thought were all right. And she was in my bright green hoodie. "What's the B for?" said someone, looking at my hip. They were referring to a tattoo I have there, just to the right of my left hip bone. Ah, that was a mistake for a ex-girlfriend. Blue Eyes picked up a marker pen from the kitchen worktop, and she got down on her knees in front of me. She wrote her name using the B that was there, for the first letter of her name, upon me. Everybody laughed, and the oldest man in the room, a mature student, did the same, but his eyes kind of said, "Crazy." But the truth was, she just wasn't that interested. Over the next few days, her messages stopped. And I guess maybe for her it was just a freshest thing. Maybe one of them drunken student nights a couple days later she'd met someone, I don't know. And that's why it hurt. I didn't know what had happened. This beautiful girl with eyes I must have fallen in love with had no intention of seeing me anymore. And it must have been love, whatever love is, because I was broken. The following week must have been one of the toughest of my life. I don't think I went to any lessons, and I had fresh as flu, a cough that wouldn't let me sleep. A week I stayed in my own room, with nothing but a paperback novel. This might sound crazy, but I believe my sanity was tested. No internet, no TV, no radio, sleep deprived, heartbroken. I lost weight, a lot of it, and I pleaded to go home. Somehow I managed the 3 train journeys, and I was back in bed at my mother's house. I didn't want to talk, and I remember having Lord of the Rings on, contemplating how utterly depressed I was. I can't put it into words except to say, I hurt. I was in pain, a real pain. And then so began the depression. It was a long winter, and it didn't ease up till next spring. Sure, at the university I got drunk, I went to my lessons, I met people, but they didn't really meet me till the spring, when I thawed. Never had I been plunged into a depression so quick, and it all happened because of a girl with the bluest eyes I had ever seen. I guess clichés exist for a reason. Hey, I just thought I'd take this opportunity to talk about something that happens a lot, I think, to people. Get depression, not long after going to university, and it's a very tough time in people's life. A lot of change. You've been at your mother's tit for all your life or whatever, or been with your family, and for the first time you feel like you're by yourself. And I just want to say to anyone that if you are suffering with depression, it's going to get better. And if you go through this experience, when you come out the other side, you become the adult you're supposed to be. You learn to stand on your own 2 feet. It's leaving the nest syndrome, I guess. I struggled massively when I first started university. I was in a deep depression. The story that I just told, I sometimes wonder how much the girl impacted the depression, or was it just literally the moving away, and that just speeded up what I was eventually going to feel, this depression. So yeah, I guess this is just you're not the only one going through it, and talk to people. It's okay to feel down, and the light will come at the end. It's not going to last forever. So thank you for listening to my story.